Hey guys, it's Skybird, and I wanted to talk a little bit about an opinion that I have, but it is a Bionicle opinion, so I've got that going for me. When I was growing up as a kid, I would probably have called myself a Bionicle purist, Lego purist, era purist, for lack of a better term, but I was also honestly kind of none of those things at the same time. What do I mean? Well, here's the thing. I was awestruck by everything that I had seen coming out of Lego. Not just the themes that I liked, but even the themes I wasn't that interested in or was too poor to afford, let's be honest. But I always stuck with Bionicle specifically because it was the one that resonated with me the most. And seeing now, knowing what I know now, especially when it comes to the things that I've designed, I'm kind of sad that I didn't start trying to design builds earlier. But one of the main reasons I didn't was because I was this purist, right? I used to think that, Rahi couldn't be built with pieces that came out after 2001 or 2002, wherever you want to draw the line. I was very strict. I drew the line at 2001, but why? Why? Like, what's the purpose of that other than to sabotage yourself? And that's what I was doing, sabotaging myself. I've had so many people today, though, or at least within the last few years, go out of their way to be like, oh, I love your builds, and I love that you don't use any pieces after 2003 or whatever. I'm like, have you looked closely at my builds? Because I do all the time. But it's not about the builds themselves. It's about the style that I work through, right? I am arguably one of the only people, and I hate to say this because I want to see more people do it, and thankfully there are a few, but I'm arguably one of the only people that build in this sort of classic aesthetic, right? That's a very particular term, and maybe I'll sit down and find a way to describe it in a script or something. But overall, in general, it's a sort of essence of a build. It's not about the parts that you use or don't use, but it's about how you use them and how they sort of play together, right? I recently picked up a knockoff set. I know, Lego Purist, right? But I recently picked up a knockoff set that kind of knocked my socks off, let's be honest, with how good quality a lot of its pieces were and how much cool stuff it had going on for it. You could see some of the pieces used back there on Takanuva. Did I drop one of his blades too? Whatever, it's just reflecting light. Anyway, long story short, the set itself had a few really cool pieces, especially if you're somebody that likes CCBS. Notably, a piece like this one right here, which on first glance looks instantly identifiable as a 3-long CCBS shell or a number 3 CCBS shell. But there are some pretty notable differences. The first and most obvious, those axle holes in the front. But even turning it sideways here, you can see that there's less material that goes into making this, which probably helps to save manufacturing costs, sure, but there's actually a reason for that. I don't think it's a reason that's exploited on this set specifically, and honestly probably wouldn't be a major presentation of issues in the official Lego version, which I almost dropped, but I caught it. I got this. But where it does come to become a problem from my experience is in longer shells, which tells me that maybe, though I don't know this, maybe this brand plans to make more shells like this in different sizes. One of the more interesting things, probably the most interesting, even more so than having axle holes in the front though, is the lack entirely of a socket on the bottom side. And this is really beneficial if you are somebody that likes to build with Bionicle, because it means you can just slap this on to any double socket that you want, be it a short Metru version or a longer Vizrak version, whatever, with as many pieces as are required to put on any armor from the Toa Metru onward, right? And so I love this about this piece, about these pieces. The set comes with many more, and even pieces in a similar design language like this one here, which I quite like, and yet it's a piece that Lego does not have, has never made. And it's not just a piece that's useful for Bionicle, like it has axle holes, but even for something like Lego, it has these thin axle holes in it rather than full bushings. They're half bushings. And so you could plug some, tiles with the little bar on the top underneath it. Now you suddenly have some open anti-studs on the bottom. Or you could attach, a lift arm between two of these, and you can strap two of them together and close up that gap if you want to create different shapes. Whatever you want to do with them. These pieces are fantastic. The point I'm getting at, though, is that Lego does not make these pieces. And if I was a purist, I wouldn't have broadened my horizon. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at here. Sometimes being a purist can be a good thing, but more often than not, it's bad because you have to identify the reason why you want to approach a thing the way you approach it, instead of just painting yourself into a corner for no reason than because, right? When I go out of my way to build Rahi, I build usually, though not always, usually in a classic aesthetic because it's what I want to achieve, but it doesn't mean I have to do that. If I want to build a Toa set or whatever I want to build, I tend to build more classic. I tend to build more in a canister style, but I don't have to do that. Nothing's stopping me from going all in on a single set and pumping 1,000 pieces into an arm joint or a leg joint or something that other than tedium, and I just don't want to do it, right? And I think what we sort of get lost in is defining ourselves and defining the value in our builds in this sort of rules that we've placed in our head instead of what actually comes out of what we make, what we do with our time. A lot of my favorite builds that I've made have broken all the rules that I placed in front of myself in the past. I go on and on often about a very particular build that I made, which is a small crab build that scuttles side to side, and when it scuttles, its legs move. It's so cute. It's such a small, confined build too, and it would not exist without modern pieces. It cannot exist without modern pieces, and yet the original version that I built looks as though it would have come out in 2002. It uses the Borak windscreen as a sort of carapace over the top of it. It's a fantastic build, and I highly recommend checking out. If you like it, you can find it on the Discord linked in the description. It's called the Benora Crab. That said, though, I wouldn't be where I am today had I never started. And the only reason I started was because I identified these roadblocks that I'd set in front of me, these rules that I had put in place that I didn't even know were there. I always used to tell myself I can't achieve what Lego can achieve because they're professionals and I'm just a guy, you know? But it turns out that, yeah, you can do what they can do if you practice, if you take time, if you learn and hone your skill. That's what I was doing. That's what I wanted to do. I tell people more often than not that building with Bionicle, building with Legos, like learning a new language. It's daunting at first, but it gets easier with time. And with time, you get more fluent, more proficient with it. It's literally a design language. And it's really game-changing to shift your perspective to understand that. Because there's so much good in what you can do with Lego and what you can do with off-brands too. If you're somebody that likes Mega Blocks, Mega Constructs, whatever. If you're somebody that likes knockoffs from AliExpress, etc. There are some really good ones out there. And I would know none of this had I been the way I used to be. But I grew, I changed, I identified some problems with myself. And I can't even tell you, honestly, if those problems expanded to other parts of my life. I'm sure they did. I'm sure I was a shit kid that no one wanted to be around, you know? But I've learned with time to understand the value of getting out what I want to get out because I started a project, you know? And I didn't used to do that. I used to always have the ideas up here, but never go through with them, never actually sit down with my parts and start building because I always thought I couldn't. So what's the point? If I can't do anything as good as Lego, why even bother starting? But it turns out you can. Or if not as good as Lego, you can do something to your own standard. Sometimes I've built things and I've been like, why the hell has Lego not made this? Maybe it breaks some kind of rule of theirs, I don't know, but generally it makes me happy and that's what matters, right? Anyway, that's basically it. The whole point of this video is to encourage you to kind of get out of your comfort zone, really get out of your comfort zone. That could be some of the best things you can do for yourself is to just get out there, do something different, do something you're not familiar with. Get familiar with a brand or a theme from Lego or wherever, you know, that you normally don't go out of your way to experience. If you're somebody that builds with bricks and not Technic, or someone that builds a Technic and not bricks, maybe buy a set of another theme or another building style, whatever the case may be, and sit down with it and have fun with it. Hell, invite others if you want to too. You can make an experience of it. I can't tell you how exciting it was several years ago, probably 8 or more years ago at this point. I honestly don't remember, where I sat down with a girlfriend and had this Lego Technic set because it was one of my favorite sets. So, you know, little thing, it was like a front end loader or something like that. And I was like, I loved building this. I loved seeing how all the little things moved. And so I got her one, and we sat down, we made a day of it and everything. And yeah, she really loved it. Like, she was like, that was really fun. It was tedious at some points. Sure, it was a fairly small set, but it had treads. You had to all put them together and stuff, you know. But yeah, once she had it together and was actually playing with it, she's like, I can see why you like this. I was like, yeah. And each time you do it, it's a learning moment. But you can do that yourself too. You could sit down, you can have an idea in your head for what you want to get done. And you may not accomplish it, but you started, you know, that's important. You might learn something along the way too, because boy, oh boy, I cannot tell you enough how much I've learned from sitting down with one idea only to not have that idea come to fruition and instead stumbling upon something else. Again, the crab story, I've done a video on it and how I created 3 of my best rahi in a single sitting when designing that crab that went through several prototype phases. And none of that would have been possible if I hadn't just decided against being a purist, decided against what am I doing? You know, gatekeeping from what? Anyway, all right, so that's going to be it for this one. If you guys enjoyed the video, I appreciate you subscribing. It helps the channel out tremendously. Plus, it gets us that much closer to getting into doing more of these knockoff reviews, which, by the way, if you enjoy those knockoff reviews and you want to help to make those better in the future, you can check out Patreon, which is linked down in the description below. Any tier is appreciated, but especially, well, you know what to do. On top of that, I do plan to get a little turntable for over here in the corner and build a small area for mounting a camera in so I can do some reviews on some knockoff sets and possibly some official Lego sets as well. We'll see where the cards may lay. All right, that's it. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.